There is a man who collapses in the heat. He cannot function when the temperature rises. His body, untrained and soft, surrenders to the first discomfort it encounters. And there is another man, standing in the same heat, who continues. Not because he feels nothing. He feels everything. But his body has been forged through exposure, through discipline, through the patient accumulation of difficulty over time. The heat is the same. The men are not. I wrote, "Those who are well constituted in the body endure both heat and cold." This is not a metaphor. This is an observation about training. The body that can endure extremes is not a body that was born different. It is a body that was prepared, that was taken into the cold deliberately, that was pushed into the heat on purpose, that was not always given comfort when comfort was available. Most people understand this about physical training. They accept that an athlete must suffer in preparation, that the runner must train in the rain, that the soldier must sleep on hard ground. Nobody argues with this. It is obvious that the body becomes capable through challenge and incapable through protection. And yet the same people who accept this completely about the body refuse to apply it to the soul. They believe the soul should be protected from difficulty, that grief should be avoided, that anger should never arise, that the painful emotions are the enemy and the goal is a life in which they never appear. They treat emotional discomfort the way a weak body treats cold, as something to be escaped as quickly as possible by any means necessary. This is a catastrophic misunderstanding of what the soul requires. The soul that has never been tested by anger does not know what it will do when anger arrives. And anger will arrive. It always does. The soul that has never sat with grief does not know its own depth. The soul that has been shielded from every difficult effect is not peaceful. It is fragile. And fragile things shatter at the first real impact. The Stoic project is not the elimination of difficulty. It is the cultivation of the capacity to meet difficulty without being destroyed by it. There is an enormous difference between those two things. One is the pursuit of a protected life. The other is the pursuit of a capable life. And only one of them is actually achievable. You will face heat. You will face cold. The question is not whether. The question is what kind of person you will be when it arrives. That person is built now. In the ordinary moments. In the small discomforts you choose not to escape. In the practices you maintain, even when you do not feel like maintaining them. In the emotions you sit with, rather than immediately suppress or indulge. The body becomes resilient through training. The soul becomes resilient through the same process. This is not inspiration. This is mechanics. When anger arrives, most people do one of two things. They express it immediately and completely, justifying this as authenticity. Or they suppress it entirely, pushing it down and calling this control. Both of these responses are failures, and both of them come from the same root, a soul that has not been properly prepared for the encounter. The well-constituted soul does something different. It endures the anger, not suppresses it, not performs it, endures it, feels it fully without being ruled by it, examines it without being destroyed by it, and then acts, or does not act, from a position of clarity rather than reaction. This is an extremely difficult thing to do. I will not pretend otherwise. Anger is one of the most powerful forces the soul encounters. It arrives fast. It justifies itself immediately. It presents itself as righteous, as necessary, as the only appropriate response to what has just happened. And in the heat of it, the soul that has not been trained simply goes wherever the anger leads. Consider what anger actually is. It is the signal that something has violated your sense of how things should be. That a person acted in a way they should not have acted. That a situation unfolded in a way it should not have unfolded. Anger is, at its core, a judgment about what ought to be, combined with an emotional response to the gap between what ought to be and what is. And here is the thing about that judgment. It may be correct. The violation may be real. The wrongness may be genuine. Anger is not always irrational. Sometimes it is pointing at something true. But even when the anger is pointing at something true, the question remains, what will you do with it? Because the action taken in the grip of unexamined anger is almost never the wisest action available. It is the fastest action, the most reactive action, the action that relieves the internal pressure without regard for what it creates externally. The well-constituted soul endures the anger long enough to examine it, to ask what it is actually pointing at, to ask what a response guided by reason rather than reaction would look like, and then to act from that place. This takes training. It takes the practice of sitting with discomfort rather than immediately discharging it. It takes the cultivation of a gap between feeling and action, a gap that does not exist in the untrained soul, but that can be built deliberately over time. The body endures heat through exposure. The soul endures anger through the same practice. Sit with it. Do not run. Do not explode. Examine what it is telling you, and then choose. Here is the part of this teaching that surprises people. Epictetus did not only speak of enduring grief and anger, he spoke of enduring excessive joy as well. Most people understand why suffering needs to be endured. They accept, at least intellectually, that hardship builds character, that difficulty is part of life, that the soul must be prepared to meet pain. But excessive joy. Why would joy need to be endured? Why would a positive emotion require the same kind of discipline as a negative one? Because the soul does not distinguish between being swept away by suffering and being swept away by pleasure. Both represent the same underlying condition, a loss of the stable center. A self that is being pulled by the current of whatever emotion is presently the strongest. And a self that is pulled by joy is just as lost as a self that is pulled by grief. It is simply more pleasant in the moment. Think about what excessive joy actually does. It creates attachment. It creates the belief that this feeling, this particular configuration of circumstances that is producing this feeling, must be preserved at all costs. And the moment you believe something must be preserved at all costs, you have handed it control over you. You have made yourself a hostage to its continuation. The person in the grip of excessive joy is already beginning to fear its loss. The joy itself contains the seed of the coming grief. And when the circumstances change, as they always do, the person who was swept away by the joy will be equally swept away by its absence. The well-constituted soul can experience joy fully, deeply, with genuine appreciation for what is present, and simultaneously hold that joy lightly enough to not be destroyed when it passes. This is not coldness. This is not the refusal to feel. It is the practice of being present with what is here, without gripping it so tightly that its departure becomes catastrophic. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself constantly about impermanence, not to make himself miserable, but to protect the stability of his center, to practice receiving good things without becoming dependent on them, to enjoy without grasping, to be present without clinging. This is the completion of the teaching. The well-constituted soul endures heat and cold, anger and grief, and excessive joy. All of it. Not by feeling nothing, but by being so grounded in its own center that no single affect, however powerful, however pleasant or painful, can permanently displace it. This is what it means to be well-constituted in the soul. Not the absence of emotion, not the performance of calm. The deep, trained, patient capacity to feel everything and remain yourself. To be moved without being swept away. To endure, not as an act of suppression, but as an act of mastery. Build the body through challenge. Build the soul through the same. That is the teaching. That is the work.